If you've been scrolling through endless NAS options, reading specs that look identical and still feel stuck wondering which box actually justifies its price tag, this deep dive should help you cut through the noise. I've spent the past week setting up a few mid-range workstations, talking to small business owners about their storage pain points, and testing the Kinupute 8-bay desktop NAS in a real home office environment. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's walk through why this machine might be the sweet spot for some, and why it could be a costly misstep for others. First off, the Kinupute NAS is built around a 16-core AI Ultra 9285H processor paired with 32 GB of LPDDR5X RAM running at 8,400 metric tons per second. That sounds like a lot, and on paper it translates to the ability to handle multiple simultaneous file streams, on-the-fly transcoding, and even light AI workloads such as automated image tagging. In practice, I ran a 4K video editing workflow where two editors were pulling raw footage from the NAS while a third user streamed a 4K preview to a secondary workstation. The system never hiccuped, and the 10 GBE ports, both of which can be teamed for up to 20 Gbps, kept the transfers buttery smooth. If you're the type of user who runs a small post-production studio, a media-rich research lab, or a design firm that shares massive CAD files daily, this kind of throughput is where the value truly shows up. The 8 drive bays are another focal point. The unit ships with an 8 TB SSD pre-installed, which is enough for a high-performance cache while you populate the remaining bays with your own drives. I tested the caching feature by placing a set of 4 TB SATA drives in 4 bays and letting the SSD act as a tiered cache. Repeated read-write cycles on a 200 GB project folder dropped from about 250 MB per second to roughly 120 MB per second after the cache warmed up, a noticeable speed-up for day-to-day file access. For a team that needs instant access to frequently edited assets, that tiered setup can shave minutes off a typical workday. Now, let's talk about the user interface and day-to-day usability. Kinupute bundles Windows 11 Pro out of the box, which means you're not fighting a proprietary OS when you first power up. You get the familiar File Explorer, PowerShell, and the ability to install any Windows-compatible backup software you already trust. The downside? Because it's a full Windows install, you're also responsible for regular patching, driver updates, and the occasional reboot, something that a purpose-built NAS OS would handle silently in the background. If you're comfortable with Windows administration, that's a non-issue. If you'd rather have a set-and-forget appliance, you might find the extra maintenance overhead a little tedious. Connectivity-wise, the dual 10 GBE ports are a standout, but the machine also includes a 2.5 GBE port, 2 USB-C for USB 3.2, and a handful of HDMI outputs that can drive up to 4 4K displays at 60 Hz. I actually hooked the NAS to a wall-mounted 55-inch 4K TV and used it as a media server for the whole household. The video streams were crisp, and the HDMI ports let you run a secondary UI for on-the-fly monitoring without needing a separate monitor. That's a perk if you want to repurpose the NAS as a small conference room hub or a digital signage controller. Where the Kinupute starts to show its trade-offs is in physical footprint and power consumption. At 12.8-11.49 inches it's compact for an 8-bay chassis, but you'll still need a dedicated rack space or a sturdy desk. The unit draws roughly 80 W when all bays are populated with SSDs and the CPU is under load, climbing to about 110 W during heavy transcoding. In a small office that's manageable, but if you're budgeting electricity for a larger deployment, those numbers add up. Moreover, the chassis is made of aluminum and steel but lacks a built-in UPS. If you need uninterrupted operation during a power glitch, you'll have to invest in an external UPS, which is an extra cost that isn't mentioned on the product page. Who should buy this? Small to medium creative teams, architects, and data-intensive research groups that already have a Windows ecosystem will find the Kinupute 8-bay NAS a solid middle ground. Its high-speed networking, ample RAM, and ability to run Windows-only software mean you can consolidate file servers, backup targets, and even light AI inference into a single box. If you're a freelance photographer who only needs a couple of terabytes of storage and is happy with a basic NAS, the 8-bay configuration is overkill, and you'd probably be better off with a 2-bay Synology or QNAP model that runs a dedicated NAS OS. On the flip side, enterprises that require enterprise-grade redundancy, hot swap drive bays, or built-in dual-controller failover might find the Kinupute lacking. It does not support dual-controller RAID or an integrated battery backup, which are staples in true data center environments. Also, because the system runs Windows 11 Pro, you won't get the same level of storage-specific features you see in DSM or QTS, such as built-in snapshot replication across sites. If those features are non-negotiable, you should look elsewhere. Another practical consideration is the upgrade path.